to talk about my body image and my battle with body image my whole life and my relationship with food, because there's probably going to be correlations with you and with me and about how I perceived myself, and these negative thoughts that I had from childhood that stemmed from my family constantly being like, oh, like, you're looking a little full, like maybe you should slow down on the carbs, and these like little remarks that I would get every single day, they still impact me to this day, whether I want to believe it or not. Our thoughts, like, we cannot erase them. We can minimize them from our childhood, and it's not even with food and relationships with food, it's just comments from childhood, from either your peers, from your family, from the strangers. They stick with you because as kids we pick up on these things, we absorb things like a sponge, and they can stick with us subconsciously even to the present day, where we realize that it's like, that's not how our parents should be treating me, and I'm realizing that I've changed right now, but they still stick with me, and they may stick with you too. So from childhood, I was always the overweight kid. I was always the one eating bread, pasta. I was constantly comparing myself to my friends. I always realized that I would look in the mirror and I would not fit into clothes. I would always try to wear baggier clothes, hide my body shape, and I just didn't have this healthy relationship with myself where I didn't accept the way I looked. And because I didn't accept the way I looked, I constantly felt like I was battling myself. I constantly felt like, oh, like tomorrow I'll just wake up and I'll have this morning skinny. Tomorrow I'll just wake up and I'll look different. But in reality, that's not. I could give myself excuses of, oh, I was just bloated. But in reality, I was not bloated. I was just fat. And I never wanted to accept that. I never stepped on the scale. I was always really, really insecure. My lower self-confidence translated onto different areas of my life where I would let people be harsher for me. I would people please more. I would be on social media more. And even now, I realize that the people that you see on social media, in reality, they don't look like this. In reality, you would see them and they would just look like, obviously above average, but it's nothing like you see on social media. It's completely different. And you understand this, but you don't really clock it. Like, you just think like, oh, like they're just the exception, but they're not. And because someone presents themselves like that in real life, we have this halo effect that we're like, oh, they must have everything else in their life in order. But that's not true. So eradicating these thoughts, it took time and time. Nothing was short term here. I started off by deleting social media, and that was already such a big change for me, and I haven't had social media in such a long time, and that generally played on my confidence in a better way, because I realized that I was living my life and I was controlling my body, and I had time for myself now to improve myself. I had time to do skincare. I had time to go to the gym. I had time to look at my style and think about me. And these are all really extrinsic values that I'm saying about my appearance, style, skincare. But most importantly, it's about internally. I had time for myself internally. I had time for me to push myself, time to think about what I was bad at in life and what I should improve on and reflect on myself. So yeah, when you place such a value on food, when you place such a value on your beauty, you start losing values, different values inside of you. And this is why you shouldn't just be worried so much about how you look physically and how you look and how you present yourself, which I still think is important. But once you reach a certain threshold, then it just goes into, how do other people see me instead of how do I view myself? And how you view yourself is one of the most important things you can going for yourself. So anyway, I'm going off topic with my relationship with food, but what you get the point is, I always had a bad relationship with food. I would always eat carbs every single meal. I'd feel tired, I'd go to bed, just carbs and carbs and carbs, until I deleted social media and I started focusing on the way I started feeling. I started educating myself more. We're listening to Zoe podcast, Andrew Huberman podcast, Dr. Berg. When I started educating myself, and there was also a period of my life where I would go to the gym and I would eat like complete shit, and I'd be like, okay, because I go to the gym, that balances out how I eat. No, that's not how it works. You cannot out-train a bad diet. And I learned this the hard way, because there were months and months where I was just training so hard in the gym and I would see no progress. So once I started diving in and teaching myself nutrition-wise, I'm going to link down podcasts that I would really recommend, and people that you could listen to. But once I started educating myself, I realized that it was my nutrition that was a problem. It was the foods that I was eating that was a problem. And only now, which is crazy because I'm 18, only now I feel like I'm diving into a healthier relationship with food. For me, it was all or nothing before. I've tried every single diet. For me, it was I would I would eliminate all carbs, and then on a Sunday or Saturday I would just binge. I had times where I would restrict myself. I had times where I would fast, prolonged fasts. I do want to say that there's a difference between doing prolonged fasts, but I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it to lose weight. I was doing it to discipline myself. But there are other ways that you can discipline yourself, or there's other ways that you can test yourself. And doing prolonged fast is just wrong, because you place such an emphasis on food when in reality, food should not be the biggest thing that revolves around your life. There's other things to life instead of food. And for me, food was life. For me, I would think the whole day about planning down my meals. I would think about what I would be eating next, before I go to bed, plan out my whole meals. And on one sense, it's not bad if you know how to do it correctly. It's not bad to control these factors in your life if you know how to do it correctly, but I didn't know how to do it correctly. I would over-obsess over it. I would not let myself have carbs. I would be like, no, I have to stay. My willpower, it's my willpower. But it's also my environment. If I was living in a household with a lot of junk food, I would more likely I would be eating worse. Because my environment, my household has low levels of junk food, I eat healthier. That's just how it is, because this is what's around me. And you can apply the theory of environment to every aspect of your life. So what I would do was, first of all, I built my environment correctly. I started educating myself on topics and how starvation doesn't help, and obviously take scientifically backed research platforms, not just influencers telling you like, this is what you have to do. You have to do like 7-day chicken soup diet. Like, no, they don't work. They are not sustainable. My mindset now is I don't really believe in diets. What I believe is in changing your lifestyle. Right now, what works for me is eating a low carb diet. But when I want to have carbs, I'll let myself have carbs. When I'm craving something, I'll let myself have it. But I try with every single meal to limit my meals, and I also do intermittent fasting, and this is just works for me. So I'm not going to give you the secret Krabby Patty recipe. I'm not going to give you the secret recipe of how to lose weight, because it doesn't exist. I mean, okay, on one side it's calories in, calories out, but on the other side it's also the foods you're eating and the nutrition you're eating. On other sides it's your gender, sex. On other side it's when you're eating, how many times per day you're eating. There's so many different variables. For me, what I do is I eat from 12 till 8. I try to eat 12 to 8. Obviously it's going to vary on some other days. I might eat earlier or later. I try to eat from 12 to 8, and I try to have as little carbs as possible. When I'm craving a cookie, I'll have a cookie. It's just like this. And for me, this is what worked for me. And the only recommendation I can give you is from trial and error. But don't stick to these insane diets, because they're not sustainable. And by trial and error, I mean working out how many times you should be eating, working out what foods you should be eating. There's currently a test, it's called the Zoe test. I haven't done it, but I am planning on doing it, where they basically, for everyone has different inflammatory foods. And by inflammatory foods, I mean foods that cause inflammation levels and cause stress to the body. So for some reason, ice cream could be really inflammatory. For other people, ice cream would not be inflammatory. So, and it depends on your gut microbiome, it depends genetically, the foods that you put on your whole childhood. So what I'm saying is that there's different foods that will do different things for you, and for everyone it's going to be different. So educate yourself and then go from there and find out what fits for you. But making food your whole lifestyle factor, one thing you can also do is, I realized that when I would watch a lot of food videos, then my mind would go into food a lot more. So I just stopped doing that. That's actually a big tip. When I would do prolonged fasts, I would watch a lot of food videos, and that would drive me insane. And I would continue doing that because I wanted to satisfy. It was an attempt for me to satisfy my cravings, but in reality, that would do nothing. So then another thing I would do is get myself really busy. I would do to-do lists. I would always be doing something. And when you do something, you think less about food, you think less about these little things that don't really matter. You should be looking at food as a form of energy, as a form of you to sustain yourself, as a form of nutrition. And when you watch documentaries on ultra processed foods, that just icks me out. Like, that just makes me like disgusted with ultra processed foods, and that also kind of reduced my consumption of it. But I'm not gonna limit myself if I want it, you know? So hopefully you guys learned something today, and this is just me kind of speaking about food and nutrition, but I am going to link down podcast below because I am not certified. This is just my experience. So hopefully you guys learned something today.